infants cry and toddlers shout the glory of your name. Handmade skies, the moon and stars resounding with your fame. Much more fragile, even frail, this life song that I sing. Hesitant and stuttering, the praises that I bring. This simple life, this clumsy walk, what do you see in me? How can it be? This humble gift is all you want from me. All you want from me.
This probably was not that far removed from the conversations behind my back when I stopped breastfeeding my son at 8 months. And yes, I did buy those yellow teats. That was me. There's a lot of explanation behind these two transgressions. Please allow me to defend myself. I breastfed as best I could, and I was actually proud because I ended up only feeding for 6 weeks with my first baby, and I was very disappointed in myself. So 8 months to me was a huge achievement, major improvement on being an unnatural mom. But I went to the hairdresser when my son was about 8 months old, and I took off my sunglasses, which I wore fairly permanently at the time. And she said, "Oh, I'm so sorry, I see you were in an accident." And I said, "No, I wasn't." And she said, "But what is this scar?" And I couldn't recollect having a scar on my head, so she held up a little mirror, and lo and behold, there were 2 bald spots right on top of my head. Clearly, I can't see it, because when I look in the mirror from the front, or I have one in the back, it's out of sight. But I was immediately so upset with my husband. He's a little taller than I am, and I thought to myself, certainly, he must have noticed this. Why didn't anybody warn me? Of course, I went to the doctor, and I was diagnosed with alopecia areata, which meant other bald spots in different places. And unfortunately, the only treatment at that time was an oral medication I had to take with cortisone in it that shows up in breast milk, so I had to stop breastfeeding immediately overnight. I was hugely disappointed, but in my mind, I still had a victory because I still broke my breastfeeding record, and I was almost chuffed with myself, not the people around me. It was still not good enough. And the yellow teats, well, my son had, and still has, pretty severe sensory integration problems. Now that usually means kids don't like textures, things shouldn't be ticklish and shouldn't be grainy. With him it was the exact opposite. He needed everything a little textured, and he would freak out if anything was slippery or smooth. So those more expensive, more fashionable, transparent, lovely silicone teats just gave him the willies. He couldn't touch those. That's why I brought the yellow teats. You see, the thing is, we look at one another and we see the decisions moms make, and we get on our phones. Did you see that? Can you believe this? Because we don't ever stop to ask, do you want to tell me why you're homeschooling? Do you want to tell me why you're not? Do you want to tell me why your child is a vegan? Yes, we have that in our circle of friends. A 7-year-old vegan, and you're thinking, honestly, that is really taking it too far. I get that you love animals, and then you discover, oh my goodness, this little girl has a metabolic disorder. She is not able to digest protein. And actually, this family is going through horrendous medical things because of it. It's not just a vegan to be funny. But we do go there, don't we? We just have half a word and we decide, this mom is weird. Guess what? We all are. We all are wonderfully weird. There were some pretty weird moms in the Bible as well. Not very natural. And they did things you and I would never do. I can imagine the following conversation taking place. Hannah was brave. Can you imagine having to do that? Waiting that long to have a child and then leaving him for somebody else to raise? And she actually did sing a song. These gossiping ladies were not far off. In 1 Samuel 2 verse 1 it says, Hannah prayed, I'm bursting with God news. I'm walking on air. I'm laughing at my rivals. I'm dancing my salvation. How on earth is it possible to lose a child and dance? We get the answer in the following verses. She says, nothing and no one is holy like God. No rock mountain like our God. Don't dare talk pretentiously, not a word of boasting ever, for God knows what's going on. He takes the measure of everything that happens. Here is the secret. Here is a mom who knew probably that there will be some pretentious talk going on. Not least of all from her rival, a wife who had many children before she finally had her first baby. She knew the teasing would turn into mocking. She knew people would not understand, and yet she says, I can do this dance and I can have this joy in the midst of my unnatural journey because God knows what this is about. And let's be honest, we have the benefit of hindsight. We can look at the story and say, of course she was so happy. She was raising the biggest prophet ever. She didn't know that. She didn't know what the result would be of her obedience. She didn't know that Samuel would be famous, that he would hear God in such a special way. It all happened outside of her house. She had no idea. The fruit of the tree that she was pruning, she never ate of. And that is oftentimes the journey of the unnatural mom. There are more journeys like that. Let's have a look. Rebecca did break the first commandment of mothering, which is thou shalt not have a favorite. So we could expect her to get into trouble with God. But the thing is, she acted the way she did for a reason. Let's read about that from Genesis. This is in Genesis 25, verse 21 to 23. Isaac prayed hard to God for his wife because she was barren. God answered his prayer and Rebecca became pregnant. But the children tumbled and kicked inside her so much that she said, if this is the way it's going to be, why go on living? I think she may have been, just between the two of us, she may have been a box bomb. Very dramatic, very intense, a little bit of a drama queen. I want to die because the kids are kicking in my stomach. Anyway, she went to God to find out what was going on. And God told her, 2 nations are in your womb. 2 peoples butting head while still in your body. 1 people will overpower the other, and in this clue, destiny clue, and the older will serve the younger. So she didn't just have a favorite, she had inside information. She knew God favored Jacob above Esau, and the way she acted was in line with the promise she received from God. Is it sin Yes, it still is sin. Was deceiving Isaac sin? Of course it was. Was lying to Isaac about why she was sending Jacob to Laban sin? Yes, of course. Here is something for us to learn. God's destiny will be achieved through and with our kids in spite of our sin. If He gave this destiny and Rebecca said, no, it's not right. It shouldn't be this way. This is not God's order. I'm going to set things right. I'm going to make sure that the firstborn gets the blessing. Guess what would have happened? God still would have done it His way. Because when we fast forward a few chapters into Genesis, we see God encountering Jacob at Bethel, and God says, I am favoring you. God says to him, I'm going to be your God. I'm going to bless you, make you fruitful, bring you back to this place. God blessing Jacob did not depend one little bit on exactly what went on with all the skins and the cooking and the hairy or not hairy. None of those gimmicks all of the people got involved with had the last say. God had the last say, and He had chosen Jacob, and that was that. The theme of brokenness and disappointment in family life runs through many Bible stories. Think of the very first mom, Eve. Think of the disappointment in herself and in her children when the first murder ever took place in her house. I mean, sibling rivalry gets pretty bad in my house sometimes, but nothing like that. Think of Rachel and Leah and the fights among their children. Again, sibling rivalry can get bad, but human trafficking, selling your brother into slavery, that's next level. These were supposed to be biblical families you and I can look up to, and yet there's brokenness everywhere. Now zoom out and look at what God does with these broken families, and what do we see? We see Eve having Seth as a third child. And Seth arrives, and he's an ancestor to Jesus Himself. We look at the story of Joseph and his brothers, and we zoom out and we see, what did God do through all of this? Oh my goodness, He sent a savior to Egypt who would make provision for millions of people so that they could survive a drought. The thing is, these mothers did not have that vision. They did not know. I can just imagine them sitting at home thinking, I messed it up forever. Nothing good can come out of my family. I did everything wrong as a mom. Look at this devastation. Look at my kids. Look at what they're doing to one another. And I think Mary, the mother of Jesus, had a few moments like that. What do you think it felt like for this mom when she went to see Jesus with some of His siblings in tow, and she heard Him say, my real mother and my real brothers are the people who listen to my word? What must that feel like? What would it have felt like to be told, I don't want to be with you, I need to be in the temple, don't you know this? When she thought this was Jesus' time at the wedding feast and He was about to do His first miracle, He looked at her and said, women, don't push me, it's not my time. Can you imagine what that did to this very gentle pine tree mom that Mary was? And when her son ended up dead, even though that was what she expected, I bet there were times when she thought, really, is this the way my mothering journey was supposed to end? And still, these mothers are quoted in Scripture for us to learn from. And Sarah, neatly tucked in there, is quoted in Hebrews 11 as a hero of the faith. And I want to read it to you because right in there is the secret of what made these women able and strong enough to bear their mothering journeys and the destinies that God had for their kids. So this is Hebrews 11 from verse 11. By faith, barren Sarah was able to become pregnant, old woman as she was at the time, because she believed the one who made a promise would do what He said. That's how it happened that from one man's dead and shriveled loins there are now people numbering into the millions. Each one of these people of faith died not yet having in hand what was promised, but still believing. How did they do it? They saw it way off in the distance, waved their greeting, and accepted the fact that they were transients in this world. To me, this is so encouraging, but it's also a little humorous because I'm thinking, I sometimes also just need a vision in the future of what my kids can be like and what can come out of my family, and then I want to wave at it and say, I wish I could be there. I wish I could see the end of this. If I may speak from my own home a little bit, we have experiences on this journey that we don't think we ever would face. I didn't think I would ever face being in a hospital with a baby who had taken medication that I didn't put away as carefully as I should have, convulsing and showing every sign of brain damage, and hearing a doctor say, I don't know if she will make it, and having to deal with the possibility that she won't. I didn't think that would be in my journey because I'm super responsible. I didn't think it would be in my journey that I would be hunting for my child one night in the bushes behind our house, not being able to find him. I didn't think I would be calling his name for 3 or 4 hours in sub-zero temperatures, not knowing whether he was abducted or whether he'd fallen in the river and drowned, or worse, if there's something worse. I didn't think I would have to face losing a baby and not even knowing whether it was a boy or a girl that I lost. I didn't think that I would ever face my son looking me full in the face and said, Mom, what would you say if I told you that I don't believe? I know everything you've taught me. I've listened to the stories. I've listened to Dad's songs and Mom's sermons, but it's not for me. All of these things happened, and in every one of those situations, I had that absolute sinking feeling of, oh no, this is not going to end well. This is not going to work out. And it's my failure. Because yes, I was the one who left sleeping tablets where a baby could find it. And yes, I was the one who fought with my husband about something very silly and caused my very sensitive son to flee the house. We found him hours later in a sleeping bag, fast asleep, in a very dangerous part of our neighborhood. It was a wake-up call to the impact I had when I went into my rosebush aggressive mode in the presence of my sensitive son. So yes, that was a mothering failure on my part. And yes, it was also my fault that my son stood before me and said, I do not know if I believe. Because we, sometimes in our journey of faith, we think when life gets ugly, our duty is to close the curtain the way you do in a hospital room. You know, when that curtain is closed around a bed in the ward, then you know, okay, something ugly is going down. It's going to be needles and bedpans and whatever. And they will open the curtain when everything's normalized again. Now, I handled my Christianity like that for a long time. When I had doubts, when I didn't behave the way I should, I just closed the curtain, until I had my act together again, and then I came out as the good Christian again. My son saw right through it, and his conclusion was, this faith thing is fake. It cannot survive the bedpan and needle moments of life, so I don't think it'll work for me. I had to be a lot more real in my faith. I remember I called my mentor when that happened and I said, we have a problem. And she said, you know what teenage years are about? It's about our children living into our face every hypocrisy that we have lived. And I had to face the fact that, yep, I was a hypocrite. Yep, my faith was fake in a lot of ways. And I made Jesus unattractive to my son. I can go on and on and on. The thing is, a lot of these things that happen in our homes are our fault. But this never negates the destiny that God has for our families. As many things as are our fault are beyond our control. Not everything that happened in our house, for example, the loss of the baby, that was not my fault. It is still something I had to deal with. In spite of all of those things, you and I have the assurance that God can take whatever devastation there is and He can rebuild it. And like Sarah, like Hannah, like Mary, the mother of Jesus, like every other unnatural mom that we told our stories about behind their backs, like each and every one of them, we have promises to hold on to. I want to read you a promise that's for all of us before we each also allow God to speak to us as individuals. And this is a promise from Isaiah 54, verse 11. And I just want to give a little bit of context. Here is Israel. They may have thought they were God's favorite. They just went through absolute devastation. And nobody even felt sorry for them. They were mocked because of what happened to them. They were told, "Where's your God?" The same way you may have been told, "So what is your Christianity doing for you now? Look at your kids." So where's that proud mom who always had her act together? Where is she now? Because we know that when we make those horrendous mistakes, people are not always sorry for us. They are sometimes quick to judge and quick to spread the rumors. This is what happened to them, and God says this to them from verse 11. "Afflicted city, storm-battered, unpitied, I'm about to rebuild you. With stones of turquoise, lay your foundations with sapphires, construct your towers with rubies, your gates with jewels, and all your walls with precious stones." I just want to pause here for a minute. If God came to me and He said, "Don't worry, I'm rebuilding your city," do you know where I go as a mom? I say, "Lord, what about my kids? Yes, thank you for restoring my life, but I think I destroyed them." And it's almost as though God knows this is where we go. We say, "Forget about me, Lord. I messed up in a way that has devastated my kids." But listen to the next wonderful promise. "All your children will have God for their teacher." What a mentor for your children. "You'll be built solid, grounded in righteousness, far from any trouble, nothing to fear. Far from terror, it won't even come close." To be honest, if I were in the audience on this particular day when the prophet said these words, I would have put my hand up in the air and said, "Excuse me, so this is not terror, so this is not devastation. What do you mean? Far from trouble, nothing to fear. Far from terror, it won't even come close." It just got in all the way and destroyed us. But there is something that God is trying to explain to these people and to you today. Because He says, if anyone attacks you, don't for a moment suppose that I sent them, and if any should attack, nothing will come of it. He's trying to help them understand that whatever you think is devastation is only temporary damage. He underlines it further by saying, "I create the blacksmith who fires up his forge to make a weapon designed to kill. I also create the destroyer, but no weapon that can hurt you has ever been forged. Any accuser who takes you to court will be dismissed as a liar." This is what God's servants can expect. I'll see to it that everything works out for the best. God's decree. As you listen to the song, God of the Unnatural, may He remind you of all of the promises He's already given you, or give you new ones. And may He convince you that nothing is ever lost in His economy. Grace to you.
Natural to fear and to falter at the call. It's natural to try hard, to stumble and to fall. But stronger than this gravity and every rule of man is the grace of the Almighty and the strength of the great I am. Oh God of the unnatural, of sinners all made new, Creator, friend of the family, of followers far and few, would you shower us with your wisdom, with love that conquers all, with faith and hope and courage, and every time we fall, come cover us all. There's hope for every home, 'cause your mercy finds us here. When our hearts go their own way, salvation draws us near. Much stronger than humanity, and the natural state of man is the grace of the Almighty, and the strength of the great I am. Oh God of the unnatural, of sinners all made new, Creator, friend of the family, of followers far and few. Would you shower us with your wisdom, with love that conquers all, with faith and hope and courage, and every time we fall, come cover us all. There's nothing like freedom, more amazing than grace. It's found in abundance, in this time and this place. As we bow here before you, with our hearts in despair, surprised that we find you, a Father who cares. Stronger than humanity, and the natural state of man is the grace of the Almighty, and the strength of the great I am. Oh God of the unnatural, of sinners all made new, Creator, friend of the family, of followers far and few. Would you shower us with your wisdom, with love that